Welcome to Step Into the Pivot. We're your hosts. I'm Teresa Conti.
And I'm Liam Polonijo. We talk with people just like you. We have honest conversations about current issues that women and men face and how we pivot to address them in our lives.
This podcast is your companion as you step into a workout or take some time for yourself. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Step Into the Pivot. We are so happy you're here. We really appreciate all of you who listen to us. Today, we have a very amazing special guest. I am going to let Ivana do the honor.
Well, Teresa, the honor is really all mine. I'm so, oh my gosh, just moved by the fact that it's my son who's here with us on the podcast today, Liam Polonijo. I know this guy pretty well. We've been through some things together. Liam, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you and I obviously, talk about a lot of things. You are not only, my number one person in the world, and I don't mind saying it like that on the
I'm not
on
sure
the
if you can see it here, but I have people written right here, and so you can. That's what I was pointing to. That's like one of
yeah.
her Croatian nicknames for me.
Fun fact, Liam probably has more nicknames than anyone can count. It's in my free time. I love coming up with nicknames for my Liam. And, professionally, we do a lot of things together too. You're a Generation Z consultant for Courageous Being, which has been invaluable. Your maturity, your wisdom, your ability to really communicate very difficult concepts and difficult ideas in these simpler ways. And sometimes that really means, telling me how to, pare certain things down or do them differently. You help me pivot, both professionally and personally. But today we're here to talk about your pivots and one particular pivot that you wanted to share with our listeners or viewers in particular. And that is something that it's actually hard for me to talk about as your mom, a situation that I was completely helpless over. One of those nightmare moments when your kid finally gets their driver's license and then they're out there with their friends driving. Oh, and you as a mom are sitting at home while they're out there driving, and then a car accident happens. So tell us about the car accident.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say that I did have my license for quite a bit before this happened, so there was a long chunk of that worry maybe happening from your ends, and then you finally got that call, and that probably built up to that splat. But yeah, for me that was the biggest pivot. And so when you asked me what's the pivot that you want to talk about, that is the most intense pivot that lasted the longest, because it wasn't just a simple one-time experience. It really changed my life. And so I can just go into what that was. I was driving my friends back from the beach one summer, and we were stopped at a red light. I was driving. They were sitting in the passenger seat and in the back. And I went to go change the music, stopped fully, and somebody rear-ended us, and they hit us really hard. And it was just, immediately adrenaline up. Everybody in the car kind of started panicking. And I switched into okay, I need to make sure that this, and this are done. We have to turn on the hazards, get out of the way, move over. But right as I'm doing all of that stuff and following my checklist of I've prepared for this, I went to driver's ed. I didn't expect this, but I can handle it. The driver, instead of backing up, actually goes through the car and takes the left wheel off of the back, and it cracks my entire car. And so now my car is pretty much stuck in the middle of the road. And that driver pulls over, and it's a young woman, and she doesn't speak English very well, and she's crying. She's just really, I mean, she's taking it really hard that she messed up. And I don't know exactly what happened. I'm guessing that it was just distracted driving, like on the phone or something, from what I gathered from talking with her. But that was such an ordeal. And then we had to deal with an aggressive man who stopped, and he pulled over and came over to talk to us about the car being in the way and being unsafe for other drivers. And that was just such a mess because he got so aggressive about it and like really looked like he was going to get violent. Um, and so, that was a small pivot in itself. And I thought that, okay, that will be the thing, you know, um, uh, for the podcast, I was thinking back to that, like, okay, but it's not just that one incident. It's not just that car accident. It's after that, I had chronic back pain from that car accident I mean, I still experience it, but it was really terrible for 2 years. Because this happened when I was 18, 17 or 18. I'm 20 now. So, that was terrible to deal with.
Yeah.
And
And it happened right around the right high school graduation time. So now it's like, but you
yeah,
weren't quite finished with school yet. Can you tell us about the school experience related to this? And, is COVID still happening? Remind me.
yeah. So this is COVID is still happening. It's not peak COVID, um, but COVID's still a thing. And so then there's the added pressure of that because, I had junior year was my COVID year. And this happened, I think, in the summer of junior year. So we had the stressful online learning for everybody, and then we went back to school. Now, I'm someone who actually benefited a lot from COVID and from the really individualized learning that I could set up for myself. And and then returning back to school, I think I didn't find it academically more challenging, but I found it to be a lot more tedious because I was like, I just got into the flow of, working from home and doing that and interacting with friends in a online manner. And, it was working for me. And so then to go back to school, and now to go back to school with a broken back and have to graduate and apply for colleges and get into colleges and get really good grades in the harder classes in order to get into college, it was crazy making. I mean, it was really challenging at some points. And I seriously, because of the pain and all the therapies that I had to go into for that, I think I went to school like maybe 40 times out of like the entire year. I mean, I had more absences than I can remember.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard your story before. I knew the car accident, but I hadn't heard you tell that story, and I did not know the whole story. And I think that there's so many things we can learn from that. Although clearly it wasn't your fault, right? Somebody rear-ended you, and that happens. But in life, unfortunately, sometimes those difficult things happen that have to change us. So, talk a little about your healing. How how you healed, and not just, and you talked about the pain you were in, and I want you to talk about not only that outer pain, right, the real physical pain, but kind of the inner pain, because I think there was for sure some of that going on.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's all connected. And so when we have some kind of physical or emotional pain, they usually come up in the other way. And so I noticed for me, one of the first things I noticed was I felt very lonely. I felt very alone at school. I Because I couldn't attend as often as I'd like, and I couldn't do my normal activities. I had friendships that I had to let go of, or I had friendships that I almost lost because I just couldn't do the same activities with them. And, you know, it that felt really lonely. And so then that started building on the emotional, like, wow, there's like more emotional healing that I have to deal with as well. And then came up the vulnerability because um I felt like I couldn't defend myself. I mean, really, like I wasn't in a position where if somebody, tried to hurt me, I could actually stand up for myself, especially not how I used to. Because I was a big martial arts person and I've been practicing Brazilian jiu-jitsu since I was in preschool. And so I felt very vulnerable and defenseless. And so then all of these emotions started coming up where I just felt like, oh my God, there's like real trauma here that is wanting to be expressed and looked at and then healed, but in that order, right? And so I had never experienced that kind of jubilee of emotions, physical, all this crazy, intricate, like um, uh, specific feelings coming up in random times. Like I'd go to pick something up and I'd be able to pick it up, but then I'd get frustrated and angry. And I'm like, why? What is going on here? What's actually happening? Like, and then you go inside and it's like, I'm telling myself that this is the only thing I'll ever be able to pick up anymore. So
Yeah. So you mentioned, that you had to um, look at trauma. So I have like a twofold question here. Do you mean the trauma from the accident, or were you finding deeper layers? And, did you go deeper with some of the unpacking of what that was all about? Related to that, I know that you had to do so many different kinds of therapies. And like Teresa was asking, there was the physical therapy piece, but then a few others. And you said to me also, I had to do some therapies that I'd never even heard of before this happened. So can you help us connect the dots there between your dressing, healing, and the kinds of therapies that you did?
definitely, yeah, the trauma was definitely much deeper, like much older than just the car accident. I think that stirred up a lot of it, and that feeling vulnerable that got stirred up. And so I did, yeah, I had to try, I had to try a lot of new physical therapies for my back and everything else that was out of alignment. Actually, that's a good metaphor. So it's like I got hit, my back started hurting, but then everything else got out of place, right? My neck, my everything, my neck, my leg, my foot, um, my ribs. So I felt like that was also happening on an emotional plane, right? Where I got hit, all this stuff started kind of falling apart internally as well. And so I had to go and go deeper into some inner healings, like inner bonding that I was already familiar with. But and now I really relied on it. Like it had to be a daily thing for me to not fall apart mentally. And I had to try new things like tapping with our friend Helen McConnell. And I used to think that this lady was crazy. Like I didn't understand what she did. And now I think she's a great friend and she totally helped me heal and I'd recommend anyone to go to her. So that was such a strange state for this high school kid to be in. And I didn't feel like I had anybody my age to relate to about that, because I feel like a lot of the time, anybody who goes through that kind of physical pain at that age tends to just focus on the physical stuff. And so for me, I felt that opportunity to go deeper and look at like, oh my God, like there is some like old history here. Why wouldn't I look at that? Like the wound is open. Why wouldn't I heal that?
So take us through a specific example of that and maybe really remembering, tapping with Helen, right? So there you are having, let's say, flashbacks to that guy who gets really angry at you while you're in the midst of something really chaotic and difficult. Your car is not actually movable. You were trying to get it off the street in the aftermath of the accident to help others out. It's physically not possible without, some like big assistance to do that. And then in the midst of all of that, this dude shows up out of nowhere and goes off at you and your friends. And now you're stuck in this fight and calming him down. And so that was big. Now, you're in your healing process. That still keeps coming up. You're tapping with Helen. What else? What else comes up? What else do you remember? What is in that wound that wants to be healed?
Yeah, there's definitely this sense of lack of safety, and that used to be an issue for me that was really affecting my sleep. Ever since our house got broken into when I don't remember, how old was I when that happened?
Gosh, I blurred it out too. It was definitely something so traumatic, but this was now I think about, I think you were around 10, probably a little younger.
It was second grade. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, our house got broken into when you
Younger,
were,
definitely. You were tiny. Oh my gosh, because it was really big babysitting time.
yeah,
We did the most.
yeah.
Mm.
But you were gone. You were on a date night, and our house gets broken into when I'm there and I'm sleeping, and the babysitter is there with me, and she's in the shower, right? And that was just that was like so traumatic. That was very deeply traumatic. And then that had been affecting my sleep for like basically my entire life since then. And so then what I noticed is that like all of those feelings that would come out in, me grinding my teeth at night or like staying up and kind of being vigilante and making sure like all the windows are closed and I'm double checking all the locks and every night it's just so draining. All that stuff was coming out during the daytime now too, because now it's like I couldn't, if anybody tried anything, I really felt very helpless. And and then, like we said with tapping, that really helps me move out of that state of fear. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and we all experience those, right? Like yours is very vivid to you and it's really just happened and it'll take you a while to get over it. And also like you talk about the house break-in, I mean, you were young and it's still probably vivid to you when you talk about it. And I think we all have those experiences in life which it make us pivot in one way or the other. So let's talk about as our final question, how was this pivot of this car accident a step forward to you?
That's a good question. Um, it's so like it's actually so far behind me now that I think about it because there was such an accelerated learning that had to happen of myself and like how to heal myself internally and physically that it's almost hard to think about. But it it inspired me to go deeper. It inspired me to get curious about what I need, and it gave me the courage to help others because it was like I am not going to stop looking for the right physical therapy to heal this. And what I was trying wasn't working for a long time. And then I found the guy and he healed me. And then it was like, I'm not going to stop looking at how to heal these nightmares and night terrors of the guy breaking into my house just because I feel like this therapy is not working for me, right? I kept going, I kept looking at other situations um, through those modalities. And I finally healed to a point where like I sleep really peacefully now and I feel amazing on my back. I love working out. I'm back to martial arts and boxing. And now I have the courage to go out there and help others. And so, like, one of the things that we were just talking about is I'm certified as a lifeguard and I just got certified as a swim instructor as well. And that has been such a joy. And that was so challenging for me in the beginning, getting that certification where now I'm responsible for other people. And that's my job, right? Is to make sure that other people and kids are safe and they know how to take care of themselves. And I didn't know how to role model that until this car accident, all that healing, and then I got the courage to do that. And now I love doing it. And I'm so happy that I have the privilege to do that. And I want to keep doing that as I keep growing.
So even though you were right there by his side as his mom the whole time, did you see anything different?
Wow.
What did you
Yeah.
see?
The evolution, and we both had to grow through this in our, combined ways and then very independently too. So um, a lot of deep heartache over not being able to help you, a lot of deep fulfillment from being able to role model some of these processes and principles for you, and a lot of deep, connection that we've cultivated. We were already very connected, but our love for each other and people around us has just grown through all of this because we kept going, deeper and deeper. And I would love to, as a kind of like a scriptum for our listeners, I'd love to just give a quick example of what this looks like in Liam's life and our life together now that you have these techniques in your, kind of day-to-day repertoire of how you move through the world. So not too long ago, like you mentioned, you were about to have swim instructor training and then swim instructor testing. And you were noticing, and we were looking at this together. Actually, let me just ask your permission. Is it okay if I unpack a little bit, just very quickly, some of the stuff that came up for you as swim instructor from my perspective, what I was observing, and then how you work through it?
I think that's great as long as we have the time. Yeah.
Okay, let's do it like boom, boom, boom. The first boom is you're getting ready for a swim instructor training. You know there's going to be an examination and you are edgy. You are frustrated. And just like you were saying, at nothing. Like there's just like this, you're really nice about it. I do have to say, like, as it's not, it's not that you were not kind, but there's the the edginess. Okay. Now, you don't just keep being edgy, you stop. And it feels like, Teresa, like he just drops what he's doing. He's like, what is going on here? Why am I so edgy? What's happening? And then he does what takes like, not even 10 minutes. Like this inner process of like, let me see, what is this frustration really about? What's going on for me here? And then he finds it. Some memories are coming up from this is now the time before the break-in. Early memories of this like very short amount of time that we spent living together with Liam's biological dad, where the pool and swimming, that was catalyst for essentially like the only very happy memories and some really challenging memories of interacting with, this biological parent who is no longer really in your life. And there you are in the midst of a busy day, getting ready to go for swim instructor. I watch you just go like, okay, this big thing is coming up. Okay, I'm listening. And I'm not gonna, obviously do your process right now, but I just watched you in the kitchen somehow and I'm like, good now, mom. I'll see you later. We'll have dinner. And then of course, the instructor training was completed so beautifully. You got your certification and you also really, held yourself through the whole process with so much, love for you and everybody else. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And that process usually takes a lot longer than 10 minutes for other people. And I'm so happy that I found that way to like do that quick healing for myself in that moment. But
Because you practice. Because you
yeah,
practice.
that's
Like
where
you
I was
make it like
going.
a
Yeah. It takes a long time to get there. And I feel like we were saying, like I've had that kind of accelerated training where, like you say, like when life hits you with like a 40-pound bag of lemons and you pivot, sometimes you got to pivot really fast in order to like heal through that. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Definitely.
what I think though is a lot of times we don't give ourselves the time to work through that, right? You've taken the time to do that and now know how to work through that for yourself. And I think that's such a great lesson. And we are completely out of time. I could have talked to you way more. I know that there's more I want to talk to you about. So we are going to have you back. So um, thank you, Ivana, for having arranging to have Liam on. And thank you, Liam, so much for sharing your story with us this week. And like I said, we're out of time. So just as a reminder, if you have a pivot, step into it. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Step Into the Pivot. We hope you found inspiration and valuable insights from our conversation. Remember, life is a series of pivots, and it's in those moments of change that we truly grow.
If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay connected, make sure to check out our websites. You'll find additional resources, behind-the-scenes content, and more details about our incredible guests. We love hearing from listeners, so reach out with your thoughts, questions, or your own pivot stories.
To keep the conversation going, be sure to follow us on social media. We're on LinkedIn and Instagram, where we share updates, quotes, and engage with our amazing community.
If you haven't already, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback makes a difference, and it helps us bring you meaningful conversations. We're signing off, reminding you that every pivot is a step forward. Take care, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Step Into the Pivot.